Huh. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Wait for a couple more people. I'm tired this morning. Wait one more minute here. All right. Only have 15 viewers, but I can wait no longer. Um, so, what are we going to learn about today? So this is going to be another lesson where SL and HL are doing the same thing. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to learn about layouts. So in Java, from what I've been able to read, you don't have absolute control over where things go in a GUI. So for example, buttons and text boxes and things like that. So you can kind of generally say where you want something to go, but you can't say like I want it to be at this pixel location. Okay. So the way that you generally say where something is going to go is you use what's called a layout. Okay. And so we're going to learn about two of them today. One's called the grid layout and one's called the border layout. And so if you have a J panel, so let's say you have some J panel. I'm going to call it my J panel. So remember, a J panel, that's what your GUI class was extending. So a J panel is basically just like a blank canvas to put things on. Okay, and the J panel class has a method called set layout. Okay, so you would say my JPanel dot set layout, and then you have your layout. Okay, and then based on your layout, you can add things you can add objects to your layout. So for example, you would say my jpanel dot add some object. So you're adding it into the jpanel, and it's going to add according to this layout. Okay, so the first layout I want to talk about is called grid layout. All right, and so if you were going to create a grid layout, you'd say grid layout equals new grid layout, and so this is the constructor for the grid layout class, and you give two numbers, so maybe 5, 7. All right, and so what this is going to do is this 5 is the number of rows in your grid layout. Okay, and this 7 is the number of columns. So what this is going to do is it's going to, let's say this is your window. Okay, it's going to divide it up. It's going to slice it up into 5 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going to slice it up into 7 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so your window is now sliced up into all of these different bins. Okay, and then what you do is you fill them sequentially. So you fill them, so the first time you call add, it's going to fill this one first. So this will be filled first. Then the next time you call add, this one is going to get filled, and then this one is going to get filled, and then this one is going to get filled. So it just goes like you're reading a book, basically. So every time you call add, the next one is going to get filled with that thing. So if you say, you know, this dot add, you know, some J button. Okay, the first time you call it, it's going to put the J button here. Okay, and then you do this dot add J label, something like that. That J label is going to be put in this space, and it just keeps going. So you, in this case, you would have to have, you know, 35 add statements. So this would be a, you know, a really tedious GUI to create. If you don't, what do you do if you want to, what if you want to skip a box or skip a slot in the grid layout? So you don't want to put anything in, let's say this slot right here. Then when it's time to add to that slot, what you would do is you would say this dot add just a new jpanel, okay, that has nothing. So so you have to add something to this slot, but what you do is you just add something that's blank, okay? So you can't skip this one. You can't. There's no way to just say this dot add nothing. You have to add something to it. It's just you add a blank thing, okay? So let's see. Whoa, what just happened? I'm going to share my desktop, and so we can see how this works. All right. So here's my code. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you guys. So if you are going to be using a particular layout, and I believe there are more layouts than just the two that we're going to talk about today, but so I've imported java.awt.grid layout. Okay, so that's going to allow me to use grid layout. Okay, so so I have a public class GUI, which extends JPanel. Okay, just like we did last time. And then here's the constructor. For the GUI class. And the constructor is where we are going to basically design our GUI. Okay, so it's all taking place in the constructor. So you can see I have a grid layout, which I'm calling layout, and it's a new grid layout with 2 rows and 3 columns. 2 rows, 3 columns. Okay. And then, but see, this grid layout is just an object by itself. So I need to make sure that the actual GUI class is using this layout. So I call the setLayout method, and for this object, so I say this.setLayout is that layout that I just defined. Okay. So this is going to set the layout of my GUI. All right. And so, so that since I have 2 rows and 3 columns, that means I have 6 boxes, or total. Okay, 2 times 3 is 6. So you can see that I'm going to have 6 add statements. Okay. So there's this one right here. So, and I'm going to add them to this GUI. So I have this dot add. I have another this dot add. Here's another this dot add. Here's a this dot add. Here's a this dot add. And here's a this dot add. So how many was that? That was 6. So I'm adding something into each box within my GUI. Okay. So what am I adding to this one? So the first add is going to fill in the upper left-hand corner. Okay. So I'm adding a new J button, which has the word yo in it. Okay. So basically in the upper left, or I'll say top left, button that says yo. All right. The next add that I call is going to fill the top center. Okay, and you can see that I just filled it with a new JPanel. So that basically means that I'm filling it with an empty thing. Okay, so top center, nothing. Nothing is put in the top center of the window. Okay. So the next add that I call is going to be the top right. Okay. And so one of the things you can do is you can have a nested structure. Okay. So in the top left, I'm going to, the top right, I'm going to put another J panel. Okay. And then that J panel that I'm going to put in the top right, I can give it its own layout. So a particular box within my GUI is going to have its own layout. So the top right. So here what this says is that the top right has a. Hang on one second. I got to turn off this alarm. What's going off? Back. Okay, so the top right has a grid layout of its own. Which is 3 rows and 1 column. I'll just say 3 by 1. Okay. And then, so you can see that I have, for this particular panel that's going to go in the top right, I have 3 add statements because this grid layout is a 3 by 1, so it's going to have 3. So notice how I don't call this dot add, I call panel dot add for the J panel that's going to go in the top right. Okay. And so I put in 3 radio buttons. Okay, so I call them option 1, option 2, option 3. And you can see that because it's in a grid, it's going to put those buttons one above the other. Okay. So basically what I've done is I've created a mini GUI within my GUI, and then I add that into the top right corner. So this is finally add to the top right corner. Okay. So the next place I'm going to add to is because I only have 3 columns, so I just did 3 adds. So now I'm going to go to the next row. So this is going to add to the bottom left. Okay. Add a password field to the bottom left. And so what is a password field? That's just a text area where each, what the user types in is hidden. Okay. All right. So now I got I'm going to put another J panel. We intend to put another J panel in the bottom center. Okay. So this is going to be another nested thing. All right. And we're going to use the border layout. So let me go back to my document camera and explain the border layout. So the border layout, okay, by the way, I just want to say that you could really easily see how you could make games with this if you wanted to create like a Minesweeper or a Sudoku or something like that. You could easily use the grid layout and fill it with different things and add listeners. You could initialize these with for loops to add components to all of these. So I just want to get your brain thinking about different ways you could apply this. All right. So the border layout. So if you want to declare a border layout, you just say, border layout equals new border layout. And the constructor does not take any arguments for border layout. So it's not like the grid layout where you get to define how many rows and columns there are. It just sets it up. So here is your window, and the border layout is going to divide that window into 5 regions that are kind of like this. Okay, so this region is the north region. This region is the west region. Okay, this region is the east region. This is the south region, and this is the center region. Okay, so you get 5 regions. So no matter what, the border layout is always going to have 5 regions. So that's why you don't need to specify any arguments in the constructor, because it's always 5. So one thing I want to say is that the grid layout is the layout that gives you the most control placed. Okay, the border layout is giving you less control. It's kind of handling more of it. Oh, we got a doggy battle is happening. Get him! Get him, Hazel! Doggy battle over. It's funny because they will fight each other, but then once they realize that they're being watched, they stop fighting. So they noticed. All right, so how do we add to a border layout? So you would say, so after you set the layout, you say this dot set, this dot add, and you have to do, if you're using the border layout, the add method now has 2 arguments. So the first argument is the thing that you're going to add. So maybe a new J button. Okay. The second thing is, where are you going to place that new J button? So maybe I place it in border layout dot south. So you have to specify where you are going to place that particular J button. So it's not like the grid layout where it just goes sequentially. So if you wanted to add something to this lower right-hand corner, you would have to just completely, you would have to completely go through every single thing. Here you can skip. So you can say, if you only wanted to add something to the south, you could just do that and then not have any more add method calls. Okay? So let's see how this works in practice. So you can see in line 26, we have a new border layout that is created. I called it layout 2. So we're going to use the border layout in bottom center. Okay. Then we have to set the layout of the bottom center to that border layout. Okay, so set the bottom center panels layout to border layout. Okay, and then we are going to add some different things. So I added a J label. So a J label is just, it's exactly that. So it's a label of text. It doesn't do anything. It just displays that text. So I added a J label to border layout dot north. Notice how the regions have to be entirely capitalized. Okay. So that says 3 text boxes. Okay. And then I added 3 text areas. All right. To west, center, and east. All right. So then I just add this panel to the bottom center. So notice how I kind of set up the J panel that I'm going to add to the bottom center first, and then in line 32 I actually add it to my GUI. All right. And then the last one, in line 34 we add a J slider to the bottom right. Okay. Now, so you can see we're using the exact same main method as before. So let's compile the code and see what it looks like. So maybe maybe when I give this lesson next year, I will say you should draw out what you think this GUI is going to look like, just based on the code, but I didn't do that, so we'll just run it. Okay, cool. So you can see that it is divided into 2 rows and 3 columns. In the top left is a J button that says yo. Okay, that's a button. I'm clicking it. In the top center, we have nothing. In the top right, I did a nested grid layout with 3 rows, and I put a radio button in each row. Okay, like that. In the bottom left, I added a password area, and so you can see when I type into the bottom left, it doesn't show what I'm typing, it just does the dots because it's a password. It's supposed to be secret. In the bottom center, I have the border layout. So you can see in the north along the top, I have something that says 3 text boxes. In the on the west region, I have, a text area. In the center region, I have a text area. Now, one of the things is it doesn't seem to do text wrapping. It just keeps going. Maybe there's a way to do the text wrapping. I don't know. If someone knows, maybe you can share it during the Zoom class. And then lastly, we have the third area. So I filled this with 3 text areas. And then I didn't put anything in the southern region, so it's just empty. And then in the bottom right, we have the J slider. So that's one of these things. Okay, so and that's the program. So A couple comments. First of all, I did not add listeners to any of these things. So nothing is going to happen when I do any of this stuff. All right. So that's fine. For your program that you guys write today, you are going to have to add listeners. Okay. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that I'm using some different J components. So there's this class called J component, and it has different different subclasses that are useful in GUIs. So for example, there's the J radio button class, which gives you those on-off buttons essentially. There's the password field class. So you can see that in particular the password class, the J password field has a get password method. So you're going to be using that in the code you write today. JLabel, the constructor takes a string, so it'll just display that string. JTextArea is a not a single line for text, but like a box where you can type in a paragraph. Okay. Oh, look it. See, see how it says get line wrap. So it looks like we can make it wrap. Set line wrap. Okay, so if I want it to line wrap, I should do that. I want to try it out. Can I try it out? Well, actually, I'm not going to, because if I wanted to see how I'm not even naming this. I'm not even naming this JTextArea. What I would have to do. Okay, let's do it like this. I'm gonna cut that, and I'm gonna say JTextArea my area equals new JTextArea with the starting text area 1, and then I'm going to do my area dot, what was the method? Set line wrap to true. Okay, and then instead I'm going to add my area to that. Okay, so I did some extra code so that I have more control over what I'm adding here. So let's compile this. Let's run it. Okay, that didn't work how I thought it was going to work. All right. Well, there's obviously some way where you can make it wrap the lines. My point is that you're going to have to play around with some of these, with the documentation. You're going to have to read the documentation for some of these classes if you want to use that particular component and see what it can do. Okay. All right. So let's go back to. All right, class. So I think that's my lesson for today. So I will see you in the Zoom room, and we can make some GUIs together. Toodles.